Um, Hi guys. So today we are going to do a more of a tutorial how to rig a live bait to catch kingfish. I will be doing another video soon, just purely on jigging, just because really that's more of my favorite way to catch kingfish. But I think being able to live bait is actually very important because during winter time, say that's probably maybe like end of May, June, when it's really cold, it's very hard to catch kingfish with jigs. I've tried hard. Yeah, you do tend to get like odd kingies on a jig, and if you do ever hook up to a kingfish on a jig in the winter time, it would be quite big because I guess there wouldn't be a lot of the smaller ones around anyway. Some of the bigger ones, they just cruise around, and sometimes they go for your jig. But probability wise, it's because more that the little fish, the bait fish, is not as active as summer, so it's very unnatural for kingies to see a fast jig that just shoots around, which mimics a little bait fish just going crazy. So it's because it's very unnatural, they're not really going to go for it, and plus the fact that it's really cold, they rather want to preserve their fat and energy, just so that they actually don't go too crazy as the summertime. Now, so I think it's really important to be able to do live baiting. It is very effective. Only thing is, of course, versus jigging, this is very I mean, it could be a lot of work, but still, like, you rather catch fish than not. Just to start off, my rod. So usually when I catch kingfish, I generally go with either this high-speed slammer, which is more of a my dedicated jigging rod. I do have another slammer, the gold one, which is the normal speed, and then it's got the other rod, which is Ocean Assassin rod, whereas this is the Jigstar rod. This Jigstar rod, of course, is a lot more expensive, and I really love its action, so I tend to keep this for more of for the jigging. Hence, when I actually do decide to live bait, I usually use the other set, which has got the gold slammer with the Ocean Assassin rod, because that's a bit easier for me to just put him out, and I can use my primary rod and reel to still jig. So I mean, usually I don't just sit there and just wait for the fish to bite and just do nothing. I still continuously jig, or cast soft baits and stuff while I'm pulling the unless I'm paddling around to cover different areas. If I'm just sitting there drifting with the live bait, then I still kind of try to jig at the same time. Now, the leader to braid, okay, well, I use 50-pound braid with a 100-pound mono, and it's done as an FG knot. Surely there's heaps of different videos that shows you how to tie an FG knot. I mean, only other knot that I've tried would be double uni knot, which is definitely not as strong as this one, but since I've learned how to do the FG, I just stick with this. Like, I know it will never fail me. It never did, really. And then this 100-pound mono. For jigging, I would just use a 100-pound mono, just because I know that there's got a bit of a stretch, and when the kingy hits real hard, that's when it absorbs a bit of a shock as well, so it's pretty good. And then I would use this snap swivel. I think it's rated at like 108 kilos or something. These are pretty cheap. These are cheap ones that I think I've got from Burnsco. They're like, a handful would be probably about, I don't know, like 20 bucks, not even. Again, this has never failed me. Miles like using them without the swivel, but probably because I'm using a spin rod when he's using the overhead, I do get more line twist. So I started using the swivel attached to the clip, and since then my line twist has become a lot of a less problem for me. Usually for jigging, I would just attach the jig like right onto the clip and just close him. I never really had any problem this clip opening up. There was one time when I actually hooked up the kahawai on double trouble jig. It came up all the way to the surface, and I think the hook might have kind of was sitting over here or something, because it was kind of floating around on the surface, and when the kahawai shook his head, the clip actually came undone. That's pretty much the only time that I've lost fish because the clip came off. But other than that, I've actually never ever lost a kingy because of the clip. Whereas at the same time, it's actually really easy for me to switch a jig or whatever trace that I've got in the front. So this is pretty much what I would normally do anytime, just so that I don't have to use the split link pliers and stuff. Of course, you can put the normal swivel, or I think it's called grommets that the people use. And then you can always use a split ring to change your jigs. If you're good at it, of course, you'll be like really quick anyway. But for me, because I've been doing this since I started jigging with Miles, that's one of the thing that I normally do. So with live baiting, I tend to use 60-pound fluorocarbon because apparently it's less visible. I don't really worry too much about the abrasion resistant, because I think if kingy's gonna reef you, they'll just reef you regardless of what you really have, to be honest. If they're already down at the bottom and going against the rock and just doing its thing, then really I think the thing will break. Only reason I use this is because it's a lot less visible. For jigging, because they're more just reacting to a sudden movement of the jig, you know, the flashing lights and stuff, they don't really have time to go inspect the leader and stuff like that, so they just hit it regardless. So I don't really worry about the visibility because it doesn't really matter. But with live baiting, they do tend to be a little bit more cautious when it comes to visibility, because the kingies will come and inspect the fish and actually have a look at the surroundings as well. But at the same time, Jared did mention that he actually doesn't worry too much about the visibility, because he was always successful using thick monos as a trace, and he managed to catch kingfish, like big kingfish, with these live bait trace. I just do this because I'm not as expert as him, and I'm just trying to like increase my chance as much as possible. So with the hooks, okay, first of all, you would need a circle hook. So generally up here in Northland, you would tend to either catch a jack mackerel or a kahawai for live baiting. I reckon if you manage to get a smaller kahawai, that probably raises the chance of getting kingfish, because the jack mackerel is a lot smaller as well. Chance wise, you've got more chance than using a huge kahawai as a live bait, purely because if the kingfish is really big, and if it's desperate for food, and of course if it does see the big kahawai, and if he wants to swallow the whole thing, then of course it will go for it. But if you think about it, the little fish are a lot easier to eat and swallow, even for bigger kingies, unless they're like literally like 30-kilo kingfish. So jack mackerels are more like a little candy to a lot of the average size kingfish. So if you want to get hooked up, and if you actually really want to catch a kingy, then you would, you know, it'd be easier to use jack mackerels. If you're after a real big trophy fish, then big kahawai can be another thing. I know that Jason Clendon, he's pretty much the Northland legend up here with kayak fishing. He's caught a real big kingfish on either a 1.5 kilo or 2 kilo kahawai probably a few years ago. So yeah, so if you kahawai can give you a trophy fish, but if you just want to catch kingfish, then probably use the jack mackerel. So with jack mackerel, I would go with these 8-burrow circle hooks. And then with kahawai, I'll go with these ones. I'll explain what this whole thing is straight after I go with this one. So starting off with this, this hook is 8x0 circle hook. As you can see, it's kind of bent inside, inwards. So idea is that the circle hook, or the fish swallows, the kingy swallow the little bait fish from the head, and then it just goes into the body, and then it turns the hook. Well, when you apply gradual pressure, the fish will turn inside the fish, and then this hook obviously will travel, and it's not going to hook into the throat or anything like that because of the little bend part. But as soon as it exits the mouth, it turns, and then it hooks up to the corner of the mouth. That's pretty much how it gets hooked to the big kingfish itself. And then as soon as it got hooked to the corner of the mouth, it's very secure. It's very hard that you'll pull the hook, because the corner of the mouth of the kingies, they're pretty strong. Sometimes with jigging, because you're kind of like setting the hook by like pulling and stuff, sometimes the hook can go onto a weird spot. Even a lot of the time you do foul hook the fish as well. So it's very, well, it's not very likely, but compared to live baiting, jigging, you tend to pull the hook bit more because it's less secured. But with live baiting, as long as you time it right, it's very unlikely that the hook will pull off the fish's mouth, because it just goes to the corner of the mouth. That's pretty much what the circle hook's designed for. This little bead here is one of the very important tips from Jared. So apparently, if you just put this through to the nostril or through the back, or whatever it is that you're doing, if the hook turns, so if this is the fish, I'll just have to hold the camera. So if this is the fish, and if it goes through like this, and then if it just swims along, and then apparently sometimes the hook just keeps going in, and then it turns like this, and then it turns this way, and then it gets hooked onto the fish itself, the bait itself, which means the hook is buried into the flesh of the bait itself, and of course there's no exposed part of the hook for the actual kingfish to get hooked on. So this pretty much stops the fish, or the hook to turn. So that little thing is more like a stopper. This is just a glow in the dark bait that you can get in any fishing store. But yeah, the fact that this stops the hook to turn, this increases the chance to, because really, you know, if you pull your live bait for like a few hours, and all of a sudden you actually do get the interest from the kingfish, and you'll be so pissed, like the kingy will just steal your bait, or doesn't get hooked up just because the hook was, like, you know, buried into the bait itself. So this prevents it. So another way is that a lot of people do use, like, you know, those threading needles, and use another string or rubber band or whatever to put it through to the nostril, which is pretty much what this is about. Again, this is a bigger hook for larger kahawai if you're after big trophies. I think this is 11 burrow or 10 burrow, I can't remember. And this is a smaller hook here. So basically this hook goes through the kahawai. So that's more for jack mackerel. That's for bigger kahawai. So it goes through the nostril of the kahawai, and then we have another line. This was supposed to be a braid, but I just didn't have any braid lying around, so I just used the mono I cut off from my leader and made this. And there's a little tubing here. So that's a tube from earbuds. So you know how the long earbuds have a tube in between? That tube, the plastic part, Jared taught me to put it in there so that this has a bit of a rigidity, so it doesn't really give the hook a chance to actually approach the actual bait and then go through the bait. So this actually has that pressure, and it makes sure that the hook is actually away from the bait and it's fully exposed for the kingfish. So when it swallows the kahawai, then the kahawai goes in, it slowly comes out, and because this hook is fully exposed, it will get easily hooked to the corner of the mouth of the kingfish. That's the difference between these two. To be honest, for me, I've never actually had any success with kahawai until now. I've tried a few times, but it seems like the kingies do pick their food. If there is anything easier for them to hunt, then I think they'll probably go for something easier. But by all means, you should definitely try this, because kahawai is one of the other very commonly used bait, live bait for kingfish. There are heaps of videos out there, people catching big kingfish out of kahawai, so that's another way. As you can see, the knots got rust and stuff. This is because of that, since the weather warmed up, I've been just jigging. That's why. So I probably have to, if I want to reuse this, I have to retie this knot and everything, and probably change the hook. Although it's pretty sharp, so I think it'll be still alright with the rust here, but either way. And the reason why I've got the solid ring on this side is because obviously I don't want to retie this leader onto my braid every time I decide to do live baiting from jigging. So I just do this, and I just put that onto my clip, so that it's quite easy for me to just rig it. And then what I normally do, if there's a bit of a depth, I would put a sinker. You can use like ball sinkers and stuff, but I generally just use the rubber band to put a little sinker down here, just so that it's easy to put it on and off, and I can choose the weight. It's pretty easy. I mean, surely there's heaps of different ways to put sinker on, so that's really up to you. But yeah, sabiki wise, I use this Hayabusa one with the glow in the dark bait. Apparently when the sun's rising, or when it's just getting light, this does help with the visibility. But really, when you have heaps of jack mackerels under the boat, then any sabiki would work. Only difference is that these Hayabusa ones, they're a bit more expensive than those real cheap ones. They're stainless hooks, so you can literally use this multiple times. And I've actually bought this sabiki, and I've never had to change. Yeah, I've only been using this, and it's still nice and clean. As long as you rinse them afterwards, they never really have any problem. I do put the sinker on it, so this would be the sinker. It's a 4-ounce sinker with the rubber band, just because rubber band's really easy to attach. It's ideal for you to use a heavier sinker, otherwise you'll get a huge tangle. The idea is that the sinker keeps the sabiki straight. There are a lot of videos out there how to catch our live baits, so you can just follow that. Alright, let's have a look at the actual fishing. You just have to hover around where the bait fish are. Just drop the sabiki down, and you'll see the little bait fish hitting on your sabiki straight away. So what you want to look for is those thick signs, as you can see on the sounder. The bottom half, the sign's very thick, and it shows you all the fish are there. Typically, when the sun's rising will be the best time when the little fish are feeding, pretty much for the first light. And then you want to take those bait fish to the areas where the kingies actually do go past. So in this specific case, this is the entrance of the harbour where the kingies do go in and out. Of course, it's pretty much the bottleneck, so you just want to stay there and then pull your bait. Now, if you can hear the drag going off, that's pretty much the kingies taking the bait. So you start off with a very, very light drag, so that the fish can actually kind of swim freely, but not to the point that it actually peels the line off. And then when the kingy goes for it, you'll see the fish getting a little bit agitated here and there, and then you'll hear a big run. As soon as you hear the big run, when it's really obvious, that's when you want to start pulling the drag up, and then you start fighting the fish pretty much. Live baiting is a bit easier compared to jigging. in terms of the fight, because one, the circle hook stays on the corner of the mouth, which is very secure, whereas jigging hook can be hooked anywhere. So that's the first thing. Another thing is that generally you're pulling the bait horizontally, so as soon as a fish, when the kingy hits the fish, it tends to swim away from you rather than going straight down, which obviously will be reefing you. So in that sense, it's a lot better. When the kingies are chasing jigs, they're generally a lot more lively. They're very active, so their fight will be definitely more aggressive. At the same time, the jig, when it's hanging right next to their face, and every time they shake their head, it will actually slap their face pretty much the whole fight, and of course that stresses the fish, so it does fight harder as well. Even then, live baiting is still a really good method, especially like I said in the beginning of the video. So definitely give it a go. I will be putting up another video, like I said, just purely on jigging sometime very soon. So keep checking our YouTube channel. Otherwise, thanks guys. Cheers.